Now, what I'm doing here is not a study. It's how to take raw material, 5 studies, read it, and then review it repeatedly. Come up with ideas that you know are acceptable, but check them out in the Bible. Are they biblical? But then you have to bring up the Bible passages and read through them to see that what your conclusions are properly arrived at. Using 3 things: language, context, and logic. Now we've gone over a few of them, and I noticed there's little interest in reading through it. Well, these aren't complete studies. I don't want to feed you. I want you to feed yourself from God's Word. This is the way it's done. It takes some time. Read through what people have to say. After a while, you get some expertise and realize this guy isn't making any sense because he's not following the basic rules of reading: language, context, and logic. Trying to fix my picture, but it's not doing very well. I think it's a little better. Let's take a look now where we left off at reading these studies. The black fonts are what the studies are, and my blue fonts are my comments. And we're talking about this guy is a commentator, this author here, on these black fonts colors. And he's saying Richard Young raises the possibility that both the introduction of animals into the human diet and the use of animals in religious sacrifices were concessions to a fallen humanity that were used to deal with humanity where it was at. Well, Richard Young, he's an author. He's an interpreter, but he's not interpreting the Bible. He raises the possibility. You don't open up the Bible to determine what God is saying to you by saying this other guy, Richard Young, raises the possibility. Chapter and verse. No place in Scripture does God make concession to a fallen humanity. Now this is what we covered. So we got to completely disregard what this guy says. And then he goes on to say this approach allows the Christian, vegetarian or vegan, to take the entire biblical witness seriously. He's not looking at the Bible. But it is seriously flawed and of detrimental value because it refutes the Bible and is not substantiated from the Bible even. If it doesn't come from the Bible, and then you have a perspective of your own, and he says, allows the Christian, vegetarian, or vegan to take the entire biblical witness seriously. The entire biblical witness. But there are different points in time where God has commanded individuals and permitted individuals and set up, implemented individuals and what they eat differently. Mosaic law is quite different from the Garden of Eden. Hello. While also holding that God's preference is for peace and shalom. Shalom is a word for peace throughout creation. No. God's wrath is going and has been exercised against. God's wrath is going to be and has been exercised against mankind, as reflected in the deteriorating condition of the planet Earth. Now, do I need to go into passages? The worldwide flood and the times when God moved one army, nation, or empire against another with destruction. How about AD 70? Rome came in, destroyed Jerusalem, besieged it, tore down the temple. No rock was on top of another. So there is no peace until God's justice. There will be no peace until God's justice is satisfied. I guess he doesn't understand this. God can't make concessions. He's got to be just. He is just. Not got to be. He's going to be only who he is. Absolute justice. And that has to be satisfied first. Was it peaceful that Jesus Christ went to the cross and paid for the penalty of the sins of the whole world? No, but he had to do that in order his justice, God's justice, is satisfied when he can, by his grace, restore the earth the way it was meant to be. So God's justice is satisfied, and who decides otherwise? I choose to never believe in Jesus Christ for salvation. So there will be no peace until God's justice is satisfied, and whoever decides, oh, I see, there will be no peace, right? And whoever chooses to never believe in Jesus Christ for salvation will not participate in that restored peace. So I'm working this out. This is not my final review. You work it out too, to learn to go through this and rethink and think and rethink. Lake of fire judgment for those who decides otherwise, decides to never believe in Jesus Christ for salvation, comma, they will not participate in that restored new heavens and new earth. They face judgment of God's wrath in the lake of fire. That's terrible. I pray that they don't, but God's justice must be satisfied. And if you don't want to accept that, you want God to make concessions, you refuse to accept the righteousness of Christ, you want to try to make it on your own in heaven, God can't make an exception. He can't make a concession. So those who choose to believe remain in the new heavens and the new earth. And consider this. This thing bounces around all the time. New heavens and earth. They will be inevitably be transformed. See how I'm just working this out. You should do the same. Into perfect beings to occupy the new heavens and the new earth in a glorious eternity. I'm going to reword that and go back over, but that's the basic idea. So God is not making a peace all the time. His wrath is going to be expressed. Just read the prophecies. Most of them are wrathful. Other passages of relevance, this guy goes on to say, to the practice of vegetarianism include Numbers 11, where the Israelites tired of manna, a food of which the rabbis of the Talmud held that had whatever taste and flavor the eater desired at the time of eating. It's not in the scripture. And which probably was not an animal product. Not biblical. Why go to an unbiblical source? Someone's flawed interpretation and editorialism. Looks like they're just going with something they think, and then they make the Bible say what they want. Go to the Bible. Okay. So this guy goes on to say, see the flawed thinking here. If you gave me a chapter and verse, I could look at it and see where it fits in the context, and then determine what it's saying. Manna was given to the Israelites by God, but they complained about it and wanted meat instead. Numbers 11:4-10. They were condemned for this, although God relented and gave them meat, which then made them ill. Because of their lust, the place where the incident happened became known as Kibroth Hattaavah. All right, let's go with the blue. Fine. What do you think about this? See, that's the point. Do your own thinking here. This is what I think a little bit at first. First of all, there was discipline, God's discipline. Of the Israelites here, not his peace. So see, the guy's refuting himself. Many, let's see, what God gave them to eat. So there was God's discipline of the Israelites here, not his peace. What God gave them to eat resulted in making them ill due to their ungodly lust. This has nothing to do with vegetarianism versus meat eating. It is due to their sinful lust for the meat, not eating something that was not permitted or even permitted to eat. Remember, God provided the meat himself. Is this the work of trickery and evil design coming from the righteous God, Creator God? Their lust was their evil choice. And they became ill. Let's go check Numbers 11:4-10 and see how it reads.